Doing a video from Cothiemuir Wood. Not a live video because there's not much signal here, unfortunately. So just to kind of walk through on a lovely sunny May Saturday. It's actually maybe starting to get too hot for us Scots because it's about 18 degrees. So we like to complain about whether it's too cold or too hot, and it's above 16, so it's too hot. So we walked through this magnificent recumbent stone circle. As a lot of people who have been here recently will have remembered and been here in the past, what really drew people to this stone circle was the kind of atmosphere with closed in, fairly dense woodland. Unfortunately, I think the storms of the last kind of couple of years and maybe a bit of forestry policy or whatever has meant that the forest has basically been felled over the last sort of year or so. So there's essentially no trees round about the circle anymore, which takes a bit away from the atmosphere. I remember visiting here for the first time. It was a bit like Lord of the Rings. So it was, it kind of lost that a little bit. But let's just concentrate on the circle as it stands. So we've got stone number 1, west flanker pointy, and the east flanker kind of square. And again, it's kind of, there's a good right angled, maybe dressed stone here, or maybe found as such, but quite impressive. I think these are around about kind of up from the 2.7, 2.8 metres tall, maybe even 3 metres high. And then you come up with the block of recumbent, which is, I think, coming up to be sort of 4 metres long. And interesting, it's more described as a kind of boulder, whereas Old Keeg is quite clearly a block, squared block, whereas this is more of a kind of boulder shape. Kind of slightly kind of pointed at this end and then kind of flattened off at that end, with a couple of what are described as kind of like devil hoof prints, which is just probably damage from falling trees, to be honest. And a relatively level top on it. Quite a chunky stone. If you look at the end point, it's quite a, we've got a bit of height on it and a bit of depth, and it's definitely a significant stone. Number 3 stone, the second flanker, the west flanker. I think I've done videos about this in the past, about how square it is. It is ridiculously square. So if it's been found like this, then it's been a really good find. If it's been shaped like this, it's been really well dressed. And again, it's quite a tall, kind of squared off top compared to number 1, just a bit more pointed. The circle diameter is, I think, about 20 metres in all. And it's a bit of a kind of sunny day. Don't want to complain about the sun, but a bit of a sunny day. You can see here the number 2 stone, the recumbent bulge, is kind of bulged in here, especially at the far end. Just going to have a wee look at that side of it. And again, there could have been, it looks like the number 1 stone is stepped back, but it could be perhaps more like that there's been a bit of damage to the stone. It's unusual to have a kind of a kick in. It could be that the face would have followed right down and looked more in line with the recumbent than it kind of currently is because of that missing section. So let's have a look round to stone 3, a classic circle stone, if ever I saw one. Kind of coming up, if I stand beside it, it's about my height, so it'd be 1.65, maybe 1.6, relatively squarish, a chunk of a stone. Maybe had some damage off this kind of face here. That's stone 4, and I think 5's been a smaller stub of a stone. All the way around here, there's definitely evidence of I'm walking on the cairn, probably because the cairn hasn't been really robbed up as readily as other stone circles have, because it's clearly been in a plantation for a long time, not necessarily been used for any kind of stone dikes anywhere close by, so that's why it's probably remained a bit like White Hills. The cairn's remained as it was, pretty much. Maybe some stone disturbed from the top of it, but probably not as robbed as extensively as other stones that are near fields for use for boundary walls. So again, a kind of classic circle stone, and again this is kind of just getting up to my kind of belly height, and it's the furthest away stone, so you kind of expect the height to reduce in the kind of classic way where the flankers will be the tallest stones and then gradually reduce in height all the way around to the back of the circle, and then gradually increase in height back to the recumbent setting. Again, relatively square. Lovely stone, chunk of a stone. And come round, and we come round to where the usual kind of pathway is to come into the circle, and we come to this stone which looks like it's been uprooted. So I mean, it looks a little bit taller, but again, if we sort of say a kind of a quarter or a third would normally be buried in its socket, that might be inclined to be where you see the kind of mark of the different coloured stone, weathered and non-weathered. That might have been where it was in its sockets for most of its life. Let's have a look at the kind of profile end of it. Again, there's been a bit of damage at the top there, but relatively well dressed, if that's the case what's happened to it. Kind of leaning back, stone here. Now again, a kind of what I'd say the bit old keeg kind of still stands for these kind of stone circles, especially this one, is if there has been a plantation here for a long time, probably thousands of years, and there's a good chance that the growing trees have literally uprooted the stones with the tree roots, or the felling of the trees either naturally or deliberately have damaged the stones by falling trees. So there's a good chance that, you know, there might have been a tree growing nearby here at one point that's uprooted this particular stone or unsettled its foundations. Coming round to this last stone before the recumbent, then again it looks like there's been a chunk taken out there, but it's relatively well dressed. I think it looks like, it's hard to kind of sometimes tell between the moss and the lichen, but I think it looks like there's kind of red granite in there. A lovely stone. And then come back to the recumbent setting. And again, like I said, this circle is definitely worth a visit. It's very accessible. There's a natural grave cemetery yard here with a car park, and they welcome people to come and visit the circle. So please use that car park rather than parking out on the B road, because there's not usually a lot of room on the B roads. So park in the cemetery car park. They're more than happy for visitors. It's a clear, unfortunately, the kind of upshot of all this deforestation is there's a nice clear pathway. It's really accessible from that car park all the way up to the circle. Relatively short walk, and it's a lovely setting. Like I said, there's quite a lot of kind of rough ground, which feels like rough ground, but what you're actually walking on top of is the cairn. And like I said, it's probably still here because there's not a lot of need for it to have been robbed. There's not a lot of dikes around here that needed to be built. And then there's this kind of central stone here, which would kind of indicate at the central court of the cairn being covered by this kind of slab stone. Normally there's some, when I've been up here a few times before, there's normally a kind of offering sat on top of this stone, which is quite nice. So that's a little walk through Cothiemuir Wood. Hopefully you've kind of enjoyed that. I'm kind of disappointed we haven't had a live feed and been able to do it with a proper mobile signal, but maybe the next time the mobile signal will be a little bit better. But thanks very much for joining me.